Oh, I'm sorry. I went ahead too fast, Amy. I'm sorry. Amy, I apologize. Amy Ostriker is an award-winning playwright, performer, and multidisciplinary creator. She's recently published her memoir, My Beautiful Detour, an unthinkable journey from gutless to grateful, which is an amazing, amazing book. So please, welcome, Amy.
Hi, first of all, thank you for having me here. So I love the questions that you sent. So I was going to start with that. Well, when did I start creating stories? I'm a theater girl. I was born a theater girl. So I love the idea of writing plays and being in musicals and creating characters and stories. And that was why I loved being on stage. And then the writing just came naturally as a kid. I think my curiosity had no ends. And I had no filter, which I feel like for a writer is the greatest strength. That my inner critic is somewhere over there. um, so my first, my writing started being published through first through Huffington Post, and then I got into a lot of really wonderful published anthologies, and then online anthologies, and that all started really. Long story short, it's in my memoir how my my beautiful detour, an unthinkable journey from gutless to grateful. It's a pretty big memoir. Yeah, nutshell is lots of trauma. My stomach exploded when I was 18. I was in coma for months, and 28 surgeries in almost 7 years, unable to eat or drink anything. But the point is, it was a long detour, a lot of uncertainty. I came out of the hospital thinking I was going to college, thinking, okay, now I'm out, I'm feeling like vital and healthy, but what do I do? I don't even know when I'll be able to eat again. So that whole period of uncertainty day to day reminds me a lot of this time when we all thought, okay, maybe a month COVID is over, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months. And so in retrospect, I'm finding that my book has a lot of tools that people can use right now, that I use now, which is really cool. But so anyway, that is why the book is 546 pages, because there was a lot. But I wanted to write it because I went to many coping strategies to deal with all of this. One was theater. One was starting a chocolate business because I wanted to play with food in some way. But various ways of being creative. And one of the biggest things I did was I did a lot of journaling, which I think anyone should do during this time. I call it kind of just going swimming in that stew of things. But one of the questions Cindy you asked was, what was, do you have a suggestion to becoming a better writer or getting published or anything like that? Memoir is very tricky territory because believe me, when I was going through all this, going from surgery to surgery, and I was journaling, I wasn't thinking, I'm going to write my memoir about this. But even if we think we want to write a memoir, you just have to start writing. And if you start thinking about or start comparing, what a memoir should be, I mean, there is no rule for what a memoir should be. But if you start editing right away, you're going to freeze yourself. I mean, this took me a long time to write. And I would say I started writing it before I knew I was even writing words. And excitingly, the book was published last year. It's done really well, and it got in the Connecticut Press Club Awards this year. It got second place, best memoir, best autobiography, which was a really, really big honor that I was really excited about. And more importantly, it's touched a lot of people because I wanted to talk about not only how trauma affects the individual, but how it affects the family, affects community, and a lot of crazy stuff has happened. So you would think it was pretty depressing, but it's actually a pretty funny book because I've I've given keynotes for the Association of Applied and Therapeutic Humor because anyone that doesn't think humor is a beautiful way to get through things. I've also done comedy writing, and one of the first things you learn is humor equals truth plus distance, and it's true. We need to find some healthy way to engage with whatever truth is in our lives. Humor is one way. Creativity is another great way. These are just a few paintings, but the I talk about this singing tree painting on the cover of my book a lot because I discovered painting totally by accident. Um, I was always theater. I never picked up a paintbrush in my life. I paint like crazy. I still don't have any formal art training, but my first TED talk was about detours and finding those flowers on your detours, and just embracing those. And that's how you get from one step to the next. Become a detourist. Well, visual art was that for me. I discovered it in the hospital, my 13th surgery that was supposed to get me to eat. Uh, on my 21st birthday, which would have been awesome, it worked for a week. And then because surgeries don't come with a contract, like you will be fixed now, it didn't work. And so I want to read a small excerpt from my book about the first time I painted ever and created that picture on my book. So I'm going to read that now. Okay, here we go. Art saved me. Passing the morning hours at Yale Hospital was always the hardest as I agonizingly waited for the day to start, the sun to rise, the rush of doctors to come in like a stampede of chaos, and then to be left with time monotonously ticking away until the night shift of nurses arrived. I was used to waking up and feeling overpowering sadness. That's why, as soon as the nurses could rearrange my wires at the break of dawn, I'd hop out of bed with my tubes dangling and leaking and fling myself onto the yoga mat that I tucked beside the hospital over bed table. The sooner I could start moving, the less I'd have to think about or feel. But one morning, my sadness was paralyzing. I just didn't want to move at all. But if I couldn't squirm my way out of numbness, what was I supposed to do? Just be with my feelings? I longed for the safety to actually feel, but Yale was a hotbed of too much uncertainty to even try. But I knew if I ignored these feelings, I'd only hurt more. I needed a plan B before this despair threatened to swallow me whole. Some strategy to cope with emotions that were too big to run from. I remember the exact moment I painted for the first time. My mom had brought in some cheap art supplies, canvases, a few brushes, and a set of kid-craft acrylics with lids to screw off, along with various gadgets, games, magazines, anything else you could find in the lobby gift shop to help us pass the time. For a while, the canvases and paints just sat there along with the rest of the cluttered distractions. But that morning, a solemn feeling of stillness washed over me like a pale tint of blue paint. For the first time, even my racing, anxious heartbeat couldn't drown out my despair. I needed something to hold on to, so I went for the paintbrush, still wrapped in plastic in the dark of the morning. And I thought to myself, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm feeling something really strongly, and I can't run from it right now. I'm just going to hold this paintbrush, and whatever this feeling is, I'm just going to put it into this. I remember holding that paintbrush so strongly that my IV was trembling as I pressed down hard on that canvas to drag one smooth, wavy line. I don't remember letting go as the brush dipped from brown to red to blue, but what I created was singing tree. Nurses who had written me off as the restless manic patient now saw that I had a heart. A quick glance at my medical history should have been enough, but as I made art, they found compassion for the pain I was going through. And they really liked my paintings. Suddenly, creating art became a way to express emotions that were too overwhelming for words. I found my voice again, the Amy I could recognize, who no medical intervention could surgically remove. I used everything in my art, even toilet paper from the hospital bathroom. I painted my trees who I missed. I crafted my inside and outside worlds, bursting with joy and pain, tears and hearts, lightning bolts and flowers. Each morning before the medical team came in for rounds, I would take out a plastic palette tray and stare at yet another blank canvas, like the answers the doctors were coming up with. I would dip a small paintbrush into that kid's set of paint and paint a brown wavy line, always a call out to my trees to ground me. As the lines thickened, so did their trunks and my sense of confidence. I could know where to go from here, even if doctors couldn't. When I was done, I'd put each canvas outside my hospital room. Soon the unit began to catch on. Nurses started walking their patients by my room to see what I had created each day. And having an impact on others through my improvised brushstrokes filled me with unanticipated satisfaction, a meaning. Art was sustaining my aliveness. My life had changed, but myself was vital as ever in whatever colors I dipped my brush in. And so that's how I designed the cover for my book, and this picture is actually a picture I took of my favorite trees because you'll see that throughout my book, nature is a big healing resource for me. I mean, it was something that was there before my coma. It was thereafter. Hopefully, it will still be there. I just gave my fourth TED talk on how we can all solve climate change. So, fight climate change, everyone. But I also got into. I have it on like bags. It's kind of sad when like the COVID masks you design like outsell your memoir sales. But anyway, art is just something now I continue to take for me because the truth is being a writer is great, but sometimes we all feel things, and when we go to words first, we can kind of freak ourselves out and we put ourselves in either writer's block or paralysis. So I always tell people, I've given 4 TED Talks. I toured my one woman musical, Gutless and Grateful, across the country for 8 years. Now I talk about my story all the time, but for 10 years, I couldn't really talk about anything because, trauma doesn't hit you in a linear way or do any recollections in life when you're trying to write down your memories. They hit us in sounds, sensations, images. So just keep notes or use some kind of creative energy. And for me, art was a way I could put together all these pieces. I was also sexually abused right before my coma. So then when I woke up, that was like more stuff to deal with. So there was a lot going on that I think if I tried to immediately put a pen to paper and say, like, I have to write this down, I wouldn't have known, I would have freaked myself out. And I think we all get scared of that first time we put a pen to paper or now type on our laptop. So don't even, if you want to start writing, whether it's a memoir or a children's book or science fiction, or you just don't be afraid to jot down any ideas no matter how silly or far-fetched they may be. No one's going to see them. A trick for me sometimes is I make altered books, which means just taking white gesso, which is like white primer paint, painting all the pages and just like writing notes wherever, because or just write on newspaper, any way that we can just not filter our thoughts, because that's important to get anything started. So in terms of my route to becoming a published writer, because I had already been doing a lot of speaking and touring of my show, and I wanted this memoir out for a while at the time, not now, obviously, now it's virtual. I was doing so much in person events that I wanted more control over how I'd sell my book. So I did self publish through Ingram Sparks and KDP. And that worked out, really well for me for this. And the cool part is, other people heard about my stuff through this, and I was signed with Apollo Publishers to create a workbook based on what I now call my 4 skills to resilience, about 52 weeks of creativity and gratitude exercises to take you through the year. So that was actually supposed to come out tomorrow, but with COVID, it's been pushed out till February. But that's really exciting. And I've also been published in a disability anthology, which was just released by McFarland Press. And I've been published in a lot of other places, but because of this first move, and I got to share the most exciting update is, you can see I'm very much in this memoir. I'm very much a staged ham. I love performing. A lot of people have asked, when is this going to be an audiobook? And I just haven't had time. Well, then along comes this pandemic where we have more time than we want to do it. And the audiobook is done. It will be out this month, and I'm so excited for it. I did it through ACX, so it means it will be available through, iTunes, Amazon, Audible, all that fun stuff. But what I'm really excited about is music is so part of my journey in composing songs and all that. So I've incorporated music. I have some cameos, which is really special to me. So I can say I'm very proud of that. Now, when it comes to marketing an audiobook, that's not why I'm on this panel, because I'm new to that. But that has been something special. So, self-publishing my first book was definitely harder than I thought. There were a lot of logistics that I had to figure out. But it was, I feel like I really got into what goes into making a book. So it was really helpful for me. So by the time that I got signed by Apollo Publishers, I give them credit for everything they do, and I have a lot of gratitude for all this stuff that now they're doing. In terms of next steps for me, I spent so much time writing about and performing and speaking about my own story that it's been nice. And now I'm on to the next chapter. Like I said before, my last TED talk was about climate change, and I'm very inspired by cli-fi and also how we can all play a part in healing our planet and our connection to that. So I'm starting to write a new kind of young adult kind of thing about climate change, and also creating our own positive utopia. And because I'm mostly a performer, I'm creating a new one-woman musical involving puppetry about climate change and things like that. So I plan on writing more and more and more. And I would say, if you get an idea, just tell yourself no one has to see it right away. Just keep writing and writing, and what it might evolve to will surprise you. So 2 quick more questions that Cindy asked that I wanted to answer. My most interesting writing quirk, just because this is really interesting, you'll see in my memoir. Walking outside and nature is a huge part of my inspiration. I am so inspired by our natural world. So, to be honest, my book is long, but I wrote most of it on the Google Docs app on my phone while taking nature walks. Um, it's the only way I could really think clearly. I had to be around my trees. I had to do something outside to write. And then what is do I create what did I want to do? Oh yeah. Do I like to create books for adults? Yes, but I'm a big fan of finding that childlike wonder everywhere we go. And so my book has this, I think, this childlike curiosity and fascination with the world that honestly kept me alive. And you'll see all my trees still, because I have no formal art training and want to keep it that way. Everything is very fantastical and whimsical. After seeing my art, so many people have asked when I'm going to write a children's book. That's the next step for me. All my trees have stories, so I want to put them into a storybook. It's just my biggest flaw is finding one streamlined story arc for all these trees. So as soon as I figure that out, I'm gonna write a children's book. But in the meantime, I'm getting two masters. One is in puppetry arts through UConn, so I hope to incorporate that, and the other is in interdisciplinary arts through Goddard, where I'm getting an MFA in performance creation and social justice. So I hope, my performing will always take first seat, but the writing is so a part of what I do. And the biggest advice, like mentioned before, is persistence. Keep going, but go easy on yourself when you take breaks, because if you don't take breaks, I mean, those ideas never have a chance to percolate and fertilize and all that stuff. So, I mean, set deadlines, but put in your own procrastination schedule and everything. There's no deadline for good stuff. And that is all.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
So now Frederick Thurber is the author of In the Wake of Willows, a sequel to Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows.
Wow, what an act to follow. You ladies are very inspirational. This has really been a fascinating evening for me. Anyway, I should give you some background on what I've been up to. I am a nature writer, comedy writer in my spare time. I've written nature columns and bird watching columns for the last 20 or 30 years for local papers in the Buzzards Bay area, Cape Cod area. And they became very popular. I eventually got some articles into the Providence Journal. They were nature oriented. They already had a bird writer, so they had me do other things. I started to branch out a bit. I'm now writing for Northern Woodlands Magazine, which is a wonderful magazine about ecology and native habitats and wildlife in New England. My latest thing is I just got an article accepted for the Big Sky Journal. It's my first nationally published article, so that's very exciting. It was about a fly fishing retreat for men with cancer that I went to in Montana on the Yellowstone River. It was really, emotionally difficult, but it was really, really wonderful experience. And I'm very excited to get this into Big Sky Journal. Unfortunately, I qualified for that, but I'm fine now. But the big news for me was 4 years ago, I injured myself with a chainsaw. So I was stuck in my bed recuperating for 3 weeks. And for years, my wife and the readers of my column wanted me to write a book incorporating my nature observations and the humor aspects that I had about it. So when I was sitting in my bed recuperating, I reread The Wind in the Willows, and I said, well, why can't I write something like a sequel to The Wind in the Willows set locally on the Westport River, which is a charming place. It's just a magical, magical place. And, you know, it's sort of typical of a really nice, undisturbed, beautiful estuary. So I started to work on it, and this gal I know named Dominique Browning, who used to be the editor for House and Garden magazine, wonderful gal. She heard about it. She said, "Oh, Fred, that's great, but whatever you do, there's two things you have to do. One, include some women, for God's sake. And two, write about what you know about. Don't write about English wildlife, write about local wildlife." So I did. And I'd write all day in my bed, and then at night I'd hobble over on my crutches over to dinner table, and I'd read the chapter to my son and my wife. And it was fun. So then we decided, well, maybe we should try to publish it. So I went to some SCBWI conferences at Squam Lake, which was just a wonderful spot for someone like me who likes bird watching and nature. But the first, I had no idea what I was doing the first time I went to the SCBWI meeting. An agent got in front of us, and she opened up her email in front of all of us and started deleting these query letters. One, just she read like a sentence, not even a sentence, even a few words. You just delete it, delete, delete. She says, she told us she gets 70 query letters a day and deletes them all. And then she only accepts 1 or 2 books a year. I said, oh, that's interesting. So I did the math, and it came out to about 16,000 to 1. So those weren't really good odds. It's like, maybe I'm approaching